Well, hello and welcome to today's program, Collaborate with Wiki Tree. My name is Matthew Banky and I'm a reference librarian here at the Kokomo-Howard Public Library. Today I'm going to talk to you about a platform for doing collaborative genealogy. Wiki Tree is a worldwide collaborative tree. And I'm going to run through some of the special features of the program, how to begin working with Wiki Tree, and then I'm going to get a little bit more specific. I'm going to talk to you about how to utilize Wiki Tree's G2G forum and how to get involved in different interest groups, as well as some of the fun features of Wiki Tree, such as the degrees from and all of the profiles on famous people. I'm going to also give a little breakdown on how to actually create a record, a profile on Wiki Tree. And I'm going to wrap up with talking about the learning curve and the importance of source citation. So just a quick overview on Wiki Tree as a platform. So Wiki Tree is a website database. It was created in 2008 by Chris Whitten. And like I mentioned, it's a worldwide collaborative tree. And this is similar in the vein of the Family Search World Tree and Genie, which is a world tree by MyHeritage. The aim goal of a collaborative tree is very different than a private tree. So you have a private tree, it's yours. For an example of a private tree would be so many of the platforms like Ancestry, for example. You have your own tree and you're able to view other people's public trees on Ancestry, but it's just yours. No one can modify it. Well, with a collaborative tree, it's a different emphasis. They're aspiring towards one tree all over the world. So ideally, all these different collaborative trees are striving for one record for each person around the world. And they do this with varying degrees of success. I would say that Wiki Tree is doing an especially good job because of the quality control that they have. And I'll be getting into that. So Wiki Tree really stresses collaboration, and the term wiki is the same term that you'll see with Wikipedia and with the Family Tree Wiki. There's a lot of wikis out there. Wiki means quick, I think in Hawaiian. The thing with Wiki, though, is that it's made for collaboration. So wikis are a really simple kind of database structure. It's actually easier than HTML write-up even. But it can be, you do need to learn a little bit of basic web infrastructure or yeah, web infrastructure would be kind of the way to put it. I'll be explaining that. There's some basic ref tags, and there's also some codes that you'll learn as you actually work with profiles. But it's pretty simple stuff. The worst thing that can happen is that occasionally you'll forget a ref tag, and you have to go and look through the source information. So another thing that makes Wiki Tree unique is that they require the signing of a 9-point honor code. I'm going to get into that in a minute, but you can use Wiki Tree, but you're prevented from some of the features if you don't become a full member. Now, Wiki Tree is completely free, but the Wiki Tree honor code, it's interesting, and it seems like people follow it pretty well. But two of the biggest principles, and I'll go over all 9, two of the big principles are always cite a source. So there is the expectation that with each profile that you create or any change that you make to an existing profile, that you cite a verified source. So this really does something different from all the other genealogy platforms out there, it keeps you accounted for. So you can't just make changes willy-nilly. If you make a change to something, you have to cite a source. And I believe that this is really, really important, and it creates a different atmosphere, a more professional atmosphere, if I will. So I'm going to be getting into that. The other big component of the honor code is basically don't be a jerk. If you're going to, it starts with the statement, mistakes are unmistakable. I mean, you're gonna make mistakes, but don't go after people. So civil conduct is very important in WikiTree, and it's such a collaborative environment. I'm really surprised at all of the interactions that I've experienced, and they've always been civil. Whether I be asking a question on the GTG forum, or whether I get an error, I create an error, I have something wrong with one of my profiles. I have found that people on WikiTree are very, they have a high standard, and they stay civil. So anyway, WikiTree, for only being around for 14 years, and for the fact that they don't have any actual, they don't host records as far as historical primary records, it's all profiles of people. They have a really high amount of content for such a small amount of time. They have over 29 million profiles. They also sync up with DNA testing from all of the major companies, as well as GEDmatch. So GEDmatch is really useful because GEDmatch has tools and allows you to do a lot more things with it, and it's a very highly used DNA repository. So there are a total of 875,000 members worldwide, and as you're going to learn from my talking about this, worldwide is really important because people have ancestors from all over the world. And there are WikiTree genealogists that speak foreign languages. There are people that are German. I have German and Dutch ancestors. There are people that actually speak German and Dutch. There are people that can speak, Portuguese. There are people that help people from South America or Brazil specifically. So it's a very community-driven experience. And the G2G forum is really fascinating because you can ask all kinds of questions. It's actually broken up into subjects, but you can ask kind of any question. You can even ask to have a mentor. So it's a little bit of a learning curve, but it's kind of a good thing in that that you need support from other members. Okay, so I'm going to go now to WikiTree's website, and I'm going to give a demonstration, an overview, and then I'm going to get into some records. So let me get off of this share screen, and then I'm going to go to the website. Okay, so here is the landing page for WikiTree. And right off, some of the basic information on the top of the screen. Now over here, I'm already logged onto my account, and there's so much on this website. But just from the get-go, you get the main gist of what WikiTree is about. Single family tree, using genealogy and traditional sources, privacy controls. I'm going to go to this just briefly. So WikiTree has 7 privacy modes, which is pretty impressive for a world tree. As you see, the way that this is structured, it looks more like a basic website. That might put some people off. It's kind of bare bones looking because of there's a lot of people that are really that are more techie, and they like this structure. But it might be off-putting to some people. So okay, so there's 7. Even though it's a public world tree, there are 7 privacy settings. So you You can have someone completely unlisted, and then you can have private members. So these are all for living people. You can have partially private information. So there's private with a public biography, and private with a public family tree, and then private with public biography and family tree. Then there's just straight public, and then there's open. So there is kind of an expectation that if you have someone, so if somebody was born over 150 years ago, they have to be open. But if you have, recently deceased grandparents that you want to still keep private, even though they're deceased, because you don't want everybody else that they're linked to be easily accessible, you can make some controls, and they have what they're called trusted lists. So if somebody is on the trusted list, they can actually view the record. And also the trusted list in some cases can allow people to edit records as well. But yeah, so that's one of the things that right off really impressed me, that for the fact that it's a world and it's a collaborative tree, it's impressive that they have this many privacy settings. This extraordinary protections basically is talking about basically the whole architecture, the web architecture involved, the server backups of Wiki Tree that are going to keep it going and also free forever. Everything's 100% free. So I wanted to just mention the honor code really quick. And this is kind of a lot. There's 9 points, but they're pretty simple. But at the same time, I really think it's a strength to the community. Just the fact that there's sort of this forethought to everything with Wiki Tree seems intentional. And so the 9 points are: we collaborate, we care about accuracy, this is why I mentioned before, we assume that mistakes are unintentional, and we try to minimize misunderstandings by being courteous to everyone. We respect privacy. We respect copyright. So this is a really important one too, and it's not kind of universal in the world of genealogy, especially with certain platforms. And why not? I'm using my own opinions, but an example of that is Find a Grave. Find a Grave, you find a lot of people that don't adhere to copyright. Same with Ancestry. People put stuff up. They don't clearly mark a lot of information. It can be very frustrating. I'll be looking on Ancestry. I'll be trying to track down where something came from, its source. They're a lot more careful. The standards are a lot higher on Wiki Tree. They expect you to cite sources, give credit, and respect copyrights. And we are united in the mission to increase the world's store of knowledge. We always respect copyrights and privacy, but we keep information free as possible and open and free as possible. So that's kind of cool that that's the number 9, that they're just working to keep things free. And I forgot to mention, if you don't sign the honor code, that is the only time that you will see ads on Wiki Tree. If you sign the honor code, you are a member, and you will not see any ads, which is pretty awesome. So this is a listing of all the people that have signed the honor code. And I just want to linger on this for a second. This is something else that's kind of unique in Wiki Tree. Basically, there's always a breadcrumb for everything that you do on Wiki Tree. And again, some people might be off-put by that everybody sees everything, and anything that you ever do is going to be accounted for forever. This is another step in the whole accountability thing, which I'm just going to go on a little side jaunt really quick. I think it's almost human nature for us to do things and to take the path of least resistance, and genealogy is no different. Genealogy is very difficult. Genealogy is very meticulous and methodical, and citing sources is kind of a pain. However, because WikiTree expects you to document sources and document them in a way that they can be traced back, um, and they also record everything that you do, and any edit that you make to a profile, you have to state a reason and you have to state a source. You have to have at least one source for each profile. So I just thought about this in my own experience. For months, I had a goal of wanting to cite sources. And I'm going to give a demonstration a little bit of how I cite sources on a profile. But the very fact that this gives me a method of doing that, but more importantly, that it holds me accountable if I do not do that. So there's just a different mindset and expectation. And because there's a little bit more of a learning curve with WikiTree, the intentionality is just that much more, if that makes sense. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down just a little bit farther, and here's some of the fun stuff. Okay, profile of the week. So they're always tying things, making things relevant to things in the news. They've been doing all of these profiles of Olympic athletes, and there's a little link here. Which Olympic Winter Olympian is most closely are you most closely connected to? So I spoke about this in my brief introduction about the connections, the degrees. So it's kind of like that, I don't know, that silly game, 7 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. You can go and look, and if you have your tree on here, you can see how you're connected to all kinds of famous people. And I'm going to show a demonstration of that in a minute. Right here, they've got a profile of John Madden, who is recently deceased, and some other people that were recently deceased. I want to give a quick demonstration of Betty White's profile and what it looks like compared to Find a Grave. Now, Find a Grave is I've already mentioned some of the challenges with quality control in Find a Grave and just intentionality. I want to show you really quick Betty White's profile on Find a Grave, and then I want to just compare it to WikiTree's Betty White profile. So I'm going to exit this. Okay, so here I am on Find a Grave, and I'm really not trying to trash Find a Grave, but here I'm going to go to, rather than just type in Betty White 2021, I'm going to go to famous and find her in there. It's a lot easier. And I'm just going to type in Betty White, and she should pop right up. Here she is. Okay. So this is Find a Grave's Betty White Memorial. And this is how Find a Grave actually started off. So Find a Grave actually started off as a memorial for famous people. It was one guy's hobby of visiting celebrity graves, Jim Tipton. And that's how Find a Grave started. And over time, it's become a genealogy megastar. You know, it's actually owned by Ancestry, and it hosts millions of profiles. So here is Betty White's profile. Now, I'm going to say that Find a Grave actually does a better job with its celebrity profiles than it does for everyday run-of-the-mill people. They have a higher standard. You have to be approved, so you can't say your aunt's famous. They have to actually, there's some internal controls in Find a Grave, and they have to declare a person to be famous. There's also a biography format that you have to follow, and you have to write original content. However, there is no standard for citing sources in Find a Grave. So there's all this content. Actress, comedian, probably best known for her role in The Golden Girls. The only child of Horace White and Christine Cocchius. She first starred, blah, blah, blah. So there's all this factual information, but there are no actual sources cited. So these are her parents. They're linked. Um, Here are her spouses. So it's a some nice pictures, well-written content. But again, it's just a different mindset. There are no sources. So her death is cited, where she's buried. She was cremated. Ashes given to Glenn Kaplan, the man in charge of Betty's healthcare derivative. Okay, that's very specific information. I believe it. I haven't researched Betty White's life or death that closely, but let me go back to WikiTree, and I'm gonna have to change my share again. Okay, so I'm back. I'm back on WikiTree, and just for a quick comparison, look at how different Betty White's profile looks on WikiTree. So here we go. We got another biography. There's one photo. This here is obviously a lot different. I mean, we had some linking of profiles in Find a Grave, which is a very nice feature. You can link the parents, you can link the spouses, you can link the siblings. That was all there on Find a Grave. Here we got the profile manager, their information. Okay, so what I wanted to get to is the fact that right off the bat, I click to a source. Here's Betty White's biography on Wikipedia. So that is backing up everything that was claimed here in the first paragraph. Betty White was born 17 January 1955 in Oak Park, Illinois, the daughter of Horace Logan White and Christina Kochish. So there's 3 sources right there just for that statement. There's a birth certificate, there's a birth registration, and then there's another birth certificate. So I can just click on that, and right away, here is Betty White's birth certificate, 17 January 1922. And then I just click back. Here's birth registration. Here she is in the 1930 census ancestry record. How cool is this? I mean, this puts you in the driver's seat. Whereas with Find a Grave's famous person records, you're a third person party. You're just kind of passively observing. I mean, it is cool, but this is a little bit more hardcore genealogy with WikiTree, and I really like that, because I had found myself again wanting to be more serious, wanting to really cite sources, and this gives you the avenue to do that. So really quick, I'm going to actually give a demonstration of how to create a profile. I've shown you a profile, but I want to show you basically how that end result came to be. So for me, I'm going to start off by finding one of my ancestors. So I'm going to look at my family tree really quick, and I know who the ancestor I'm going to look for is. It happens to be my second great grandfather, and I am going to add a record for his sibling, and her name is Minnie. And so I'm going to type some information. Actually, Minnie was her preferred name. I have records that her actual first name was Wilhelmina, and Minnie was a nickname. So I'm going to skip some of her birth information right off. And I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to go to sources. So I'm going to enter the rest of the fields, and this is one way of creating a profile. There's actually other ways of creating profiles in WikiTree. One of the most common, which is import through a GEDCOM. But even with importing a GEDCOM, you need to add a source. Some GEDCOMs will allow you to import with a source, but regardless, there are going to be some profiles that you'll have to enter by hand, like I'm doing right now. So what I have done is I've actually already gone to Ancestry and Family Search for this demonstration, and I've put Minnie's 3 of her records. I've put them in a tab delimited file, and all I'm going to do is copy and paste them carefully. So these were all from Family Search's database and Find a Grave. And if you start making profiles in WikiTree, I actually really appreciate how it slows me down, which is the opposite of working on your ancestry family tree where you can just copy things or upload records. You have to really slowly look through things and evaluate. And that's, again, I mean, that's getting you on the road to better genealogy when you're slowly evaluating and looking at inconsistencies. You're all actually starting to get on the road to the genealogical proof standard, and you can become a lot more intentional. So really quick, I know for a fact that she died in 1964, and I'm just going to enter a birth date really quick. I'm going to change it, of course. I have to enter a birth date just to create this record. Oh, and very importantly, I get a listing to prevent duplicate records. Now, my surname is pretty unusual, but what's really interesting is that Bennett is actually a related surname, even how different it is. Benedict, Bennett, Banks, not even close to Banky, but there's Banks. There's a couple of mini Bankies, but I know that they are not mine. So I'm going to go ahead. I know she was born in Montcalm, Michigan. I'm going to have to look at some of her records to get her death record correct. Really quick, I just wanted to show. So it auto-populates some information on the biography. She was born in 1886. She was the daughter of Carl and Augusta Banky. And here their names are already linked. So you can go directly to there. She passed away in 1964. Okay, so I'm just going to click on this really quick. So she was married in 1919 to Gerald Siebert. So in my WikiTree, here in my WikiTree profile, what I'm going to do, I go into edit mode now, and basically I'm just going to cut and paste. I can do what is called an inline text citation. And within these ref marks, I paste. So now I'm going to have an in-text citation. And now I need to write something. I need to make a statement. I forget what I just said. I'm going to have to fix this record. I'm trying to give it as just a demonstration, but she was married to Gerald Siebert in 1919. And so now I go down here and I need to give a reason just for going in and editing. So you can say that this is cumbersome, this is burdensome. Again, what I'm going to point to is that it holds you accountable, and it holds you accountable to the whole community, since everybody can see why you're making an edit. And there are people that that really work on WikiTree's profiles, not just their own. They're called data doctors, and they run tests for just inconsistencies in records. So if you make a record without a death date, they're going to go in and look at records, and they're going to provide you with a death date and add a source, or at the very least, they're going to add a reason for changing a record, and they're doing it to improve things. So I get that from now and then. I'll have a profile that I've worked on that someone else has gone through and made a change, and they fixed it. Now, you might feel defensive, but again, WikiTree being what it is, it's not your record. Even if you are the profile manager, you created the record, that does not mean that other people can't make changes, and they're actually making improvements. So you have to be humble about it. And then when you've made glaring errors and people fix things, that's when you really want to be humble, and you want to go through and tell people thank you. You can go through and thank people on here, which is really neat. So anyway, what I'm doing is I'm working on formatting. So I had a citation. I did an inline text citation, which required that I put my information within these ref tags, and one of them is open, one of them has a backspace with the second ref tag. It's kind of like HTML. It's very similar. It's wiki, but it still requires a little bit of text stuff, but it's simple. So now I save it. So now I have this little citation, and obviously I should have put she was married to Gerald Siebert after she was the daughter of Carl and Augusta Banky. I've kind of making a mess of this record. I'm going to have to fix it. But this kind of shows you just the basics of what a biography looks like. And this is what biography writing is. If you're getting into hardcore genealogy, if you're trying to apply to a lineage society, if you apply to a lineage society, you have to do things like this. Basic biography writing, you're covering birth, marriage, death, and the geographic locations of those three events, and where they had children, etc. You could definitely go further, and add more color, but you still have to have a source. You can't say something crazy like, I don't know, she was a spy for the German army in the World War One, and you have no records for that. You have no record of her military involvement, no shipping records that she went over to Germany. I'm giving this is off the just a stream of consciousness thing, but you can't just state crazy things on WikiTree and expect to not come under scrutiny. Anything that you state in a biography or about a person, you have to cite a reliable source. And if you go and you recently I got pre-1700 approval. With pre-1700 approval, you have to take like a little test, and you're expected to actually get into a specialized group. And if you're going, even if you get the pre-1700 approval, you have to cite a primary source record. So you can't just cite indexes. You are expected to do even higher level work than just the regular WikiTree profiles. So yeah, it just sort of lines it up. Each statement that you make, you are expected to cite something, or at the very least, you're at least really expected to cite a source one source for each profile. Okay, so I'm going to go back really quick. I'm going to go back to the landing page. So I mentioned the degrees of separation between famous people. I mentioned the G2G forum. So I'm going to go into the G2G forum really quick and show you what to expect with this feature. The G2G feed is really a mixture of a lot of different questions and groupings. So G2G actually means genealogist to genealogist. Right here, it's specific to me. I have a couple of tags that I follow for Germany and for Palatine, which is a region of Germany. Right here are the most recent on the feed. So people ask really specific questions. They're looking for a marriage record for this Hein Hartscha in Germany. This person's asking about their brick wall. And as you can see, there's a lot of activity. I've been on some forums that are purely user-driven. I did a program on different family trees back in September. One of them was My Family Echo, and I'm not trying to trash that group or that program, but there were a lot of unanswered questions. They were just forum questions, and only other users would answer them. But this is all just other users, and they're very responsive. I've asked a few questions on this forum, especially when I was just getting started. Some of these questions I felt really dumb asking, but I couldn't figure out, for example, how to do a inline text citation, which I just did. I was having trouble just figuring out how to do that, and they talked me through it. More importantly, they actually linked a document, and there are documents for doing anything in WikiTree practically. You don't even have to look within WikiTree itself. You can Google something. You can just go out and do a Google search, WikiTree inline text citation, and you'll get a document from WikiTree. So there are just so many standards, and everything is spelled out. But anyway, these questions, you're just asking other WikiTree users, and they get answered fast. A lot of times you'll get multiple answers, but you will always get a response. And that's something that I just think is invaluable about the community experience. Now here they're broken down. There's like one thread that is just there to thank people. You get different badges with using WikiTree. So one of them is a wonderful WikiTree or a generous WikiTreeer. I'll show you really quick my badges. I have to admit, I was never a scout or anything, but I feel already proud of these badges. So, you know, it's a neat little incentive. You could say it's silly, it doesn't mean anything, but I'm already pre-1700 approved. Last month, I worked on WikiTree so much that I got the Club 1000, which I did 1,000 contributions, which include edits. I was a part of the WikiTree challenge. I'll talk about that again in a minute. So I uploaded my GEDCOM, I signed the honor code. I also linked DNA. So these badges are kind of neat. And anytime you go to someone's profile, you get a sense of what they've done. You know, one thing that beyond just sort of a collecting badges for feeling like good about yourself is when you see a person's profile, you immediately see kind of the credentials that they have built up, and you get a sense of what their area of specialization is, how long they've been on WikiTree, and how much work they've done. So if someone corrects you and you check their profile, you're like, okay, I've got currently, I've got a little over 1,000 contributions. You go to someone's, their profile and they have 100,000 contributions. You're like, okay, this person is more experienced than me. They're doing good work. Oh, they're a data doctor. So like I mentioned while I was working on the profile, the data doctors will just go in and they improve everything. They fix data discrepancies. Okay, so I'm back in the G2G forum. So I just wanted to jump out really quick and show you about badges because it's something else that's just of interest and a little side note. But in these other categories, in addition to showing appreciation, there's more specific areas that you can ask questions. But there's also this is how people communicate in different projects. So there are all of these different projects. I haven't gotten into one yet, but I am following the tags on Germany and the Palatine. And especially if I actually start to use my pre-1700 records and create profiles for my pre-1700, I have to get in one of these groups. And I'll get into like a Palatine group or an early settlers of Pennsylvania group. And it's just amazing all the work that people do together on this site. I honestly think it's one of the most impressive features of WikiTree, just how much they stress collaboration. Okay, well, I hope that you enjoyed this presentation, and I hope that this will encourage you to get working on collaborating with WikiTree. And if you ever have questions, if you're a Howard County resident and you are looking to do research, do not be afraid to come into the Howard County Public Library, Kokomo-Howard County Public Library here at Maine. And down in the basement, go visit Amy Russell and her crew, and they will be able to help you with your genealogy. And I just thank you all for coming out, and please watch again.